there's so much that could be said, but I just want to try to get a couple more segments here. Um, this might be one or two, depending on how it goes. Let's break down real quick some of the articles that we were planning to talk about tonight. So, Sean, I think you had a really strong sense of what we were talking about with the green and golden bell frog saunas to fight off the chytrid virus. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the
Yeah,
chytrid
so
virus.
um I mean essentially chytrid is it's exceptionally dangerous, right? And because of that, it's really, really hard to try and fight that off. And so what we have to look at is how can we do it in a sustainable way, right? But if we only have certain abilities to do it, then it's not going to be sustainable everywhere. So when you're looking at that study, it was mainly talking about frogs in Australia, which are more prone to higher temperatures. So for that, it works really well for the Australian frogs because they're already used to high temperatures. Their skin is built for it. It's just part of their phylogeny. But when you try to apply that to frogs, say in South America or even North America, it's not going to work as well. Now, I think this is a good segue into finding better ways to treat chytrid because that fungus really does have to have like ideal temperatures and humidity. And the heat study really showed that it can burn it off. But you have to make it like sustainable for all species to be able to do that. And there's just a lot of species that's never going to be able to happen with.
Exactly. Yeah, with this just being meant for the bell frogs, not any other species. I just thought this was really interesting because we're talking about one of the animals that was devastated by chytrid. You know, it's one of the few survivors that's found a way to, to hang in there and actually invade New Zealand. But it's just crazy to think about. We're finding I don't necessarily want to say a cure for it, but we're finding a way to manage it in a way that's, I think, meaningful because, like we were talking about before we started recording, they're using things that are so cheap. It's not like people have to spend thousands of dollars, even if they do keep frogs and toads. Like, there are things that might just be laying around outside, these types of, what do you call them, bricks with holes in them.
Yeah, tiling. So essentially just terracotta tubes and terracotta pots. They're really, really easy to make and they're really easy to find. A lot of old farmers have them. In fact, on Marketplace around here, there's a guy who's had them up all summer long. He's got a barn full of these things. And really what you can do is you can just take these terracotta tubes, stack them on the ground, and then you make a pyramid out of them and go up as high as you want. And they'll hold on to moisture because it's terracotta. But then because it's clay based, it'll absorb up a lot of the heat from the atmosphere around them. So they do create a sauna essentially. And it would be interesting to see if that would work on chytrid in the United States because we have instances of it out in California. And maybe those frogs out there are when I say more resistant, are going to be more prone to have hotter temperatures, and maybe that would work for them. And maybe it might work with some like Florida species. But it's interesting because I was talking to somebody about when I was in Panama, and it's like when you're out in the sun, it is hot. I mean, like unbelievably hot. But the minute you go into the jungle, I mean, it cools right down. And most of the amphibians are staying under that jungle canopy. They're not prone to coming out into the bright sunlight. Even frogs around here in Michigan and Pennsylvania, we don't really see them out in bright sun. I mean, in the spring and fall, yeah, because the sun's not as intense. But midsummer, how often do you really see a frog or toad just right out in the middle of the open sun? You don't. They're usually close to a water's edge or close to a canopy or something else. So I think this study overall has promise, and I think it can really work in certain areas. But having it be applicable around the world, I just don't know how well that's going to work out.
Right. I agree with that. For me, as somebody who's actually keeping bell frogs, it was just really cool to follow this story because it's like, I'm looking at one of the most critically endangered frogs, across the world from me, but like I have them legally in a tank, and just thinking about their peers, that are out there in the wild who have consistently been dying from this. So, no, I agree with you. I don't think that this is a one size fits all either situation because different frogs have so many different requirements. I mean, the only comparable thing that I can think of, if we're talking about around here, would be the pond frogs because that's what they're very similar to. I mean, I think the most interesting that this could apply to, if we could test it in a lab, would be the northern green frog because they're notorious for carrying ranavirus and others, but they also seem to get chytrid more than what other species did. The nature center that I work at as well, part-time, they did a research study and swabbed wild frogs, and literally it was just the green frogs. It was a small sample size, but it was just the green frogs that had chytrid. So my thoughts would be, what would happen with a bullfrog or a pig frog from the south, a species that's more likely to sit out in the sun a little bit more than, something like any other animal, basically, because like we said, toads and tree frogs and even others, some of the other pond frogs, like I don't think pickerel frogs would be a good example for doing this because they're cold, like they're a cold tolerant species. They'd probably not do well in other situations if we're baking them, but
Right. And it's, every environment's going to be different with like how we attack this.
yeah.
But I mean, again, like overall, like, in Australia, I think they're doing a lot of really interesting things to combat invasives. And like, you can consider this fungus an invasive. So this heat study, I think, could be amazing because not only are you creating this essentially like a contraption or a house or whatever that's going to help kill the chytrid, but it's also just creating frog habitat. I mean, and not only that, other animals are going to flock to use it too. So if they just start stacking out these bricks with holes in them, start stacking terracotta, and they encourage the public to do it, you're actually going to see a rise in the population of a lot of animals because now they have places that they can go and they can be. And like something else, Australia is doing right now is, just like a lot of other countries, they're trying to combat king toads. And recently they did a pheromonal study. So for those of you listening that aren't familiar, in the state of Michigan, we have a sea lamprey issue. And sea lampreys are invasive into the Great Lakes. They kill fish by latching onto them. They become a parasite. So what we were able to do is start using pheromones in the water to attract the lampreys and then kill them en masse. And what they started doing is the same thing in Australia, but with cane toads. And it's extremely successful using a pheromone to attract them all in and then kill them. So, I mean, I feel like being that they're an island environment, their ecosystem is much more fragile than, say, one in the United States. So I feel like they're really kind of pushing the boundaries of like, okay, what can we do to combat this? And this whole heat thing with the chytrid is actually really, really amazing. Like you said, it's not applicable around the world, and it only applies to certain instances. But with habitats similar to Australia, other countries may be able to implement that as well.
I completely agree. Amelia's like, next.
I mean, there's a lot of this stuff here that Sean's saying that's like, yeah, hit it on the head. Like, I don't really have anything else better that I can contribute.
I understand. What about the other article here? Amelia, did you ever keep a species of fanged frog?
I have not. I have my Wolverine frogs. I have had my marsupial frogs, but
okay,
I'm not sure if that's a thing that's actually in the hobby, honestly.
So obviously we all know what they're talking about with the fangs, like what they actually mean.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with limnonectes being a thing that's in the hobby right now.
Amelia, would you want to take a stab? Ironically, because we're talking about fangs, would you want to take a stab at what their fangs actually are? with these with this type of frog?
Oh, you scroll up a bit. I mean, yeah, I would agree with what they're assuming down there, that it's probably kind of a I'm sure it probably helps in prey capture, but yeah, if it's a sex specific thing, then it's totally possible that it does have something to do with interspecific combat, or like I don't know if they've watched their whole life cycle, if it might end up being something like with the Wolverine frogs, where the males get those hairy protrusions to increase surface area so that they can absorb more oxygen from the water, because they do all of the nest guarding and stuff like that. Or like male glass frogs will guard their nests, stuff like that. And the glass frogs actually have adaptations for male-to-male combat. They've got spikes on their humeral bones and their vocal sacs and stuff like that. So it could also be for some kind of...
Reminds me of the mountain chicken frog, the Leptodactylus pentadactylus. They get that big carotid thumb that, like, they'll attach to another male and literally shove the spikes into their neck. But then they also do that as part of their amplexus with females. But the fangs is just interesting. It's like maybe... usually when we see frogs perform amplexus, I mean, they're like bear hugging or they're choking.
Right.
Been any observations that these guys bite? And if the fangs are part of hanging on to the female, so instead of using a keratin thumb, they're using the fangs to then hang on to her during amplexus or something like that.
I could see that.
I want to see a picture of the skull here and see how these are different from, like, the odontoid stuff that you find in, like, pixie frogs and things like that.
Sean, I promise I called on you. I promise. Let's see. Let's see here. So,
do they have?
I don't know why they don't have
of
them.
Like their actual skeleton, like specifically.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what you were looking for, Amelia, and that's what I would be interested in too.
There we go.
Because, like, just that description, it sounds like the spikes that a lot of frogs with, like, bigger heads that are made for grabbing bigger prey, like the Pac-Mans, the pixies, stuff like that, have.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure if they have... Like, I'm not exactly sure. Is that... do you think that... Should I click on that
click
one?
on it and see what happens.
I don't know.
So is it actual teeth or is it like a keratin buildup?
I mean...
Because I'm not. You guys are probably more familiar, especially you, Amelia, with this.
Oh,
stuff.
this is the same frog. Yeah, this is the frog that they're talking about. That's
Okay,
funny.
yeah, it's got a wider spacing. They're not, like, right clustered together at the tip, but it's, like, very much on either side of the jawbone, so it does look different. Huh.
I guess in my mind, because I hadn't seen a photo of them, I thought it would be from the top. And to me, that would make more sense when we're talking about, like, maybe if they're biting for amplexus, but the bottom just weird.
I also wonder if there's maybe a prey item that we're not thinking of that might be a vertebrate that they might eat if they're that big. With them saying that they're the size of a chicken.
Well, and, like, looking at the curvature backwards and how, like, the top of the tooth has, like, an angle to it. With that
looks like it's for holding prey.
Yeah, if something's trying to back off, that's hooking into them and stopping them from going.
Yeah.
And I think
Just
we've
like
all
snakes.
watched a lot of frogs try to use more of the top of their mouth to go over something. So if that bottom is hooked in and they're trying to grab at it, they flip over and they're probably pulling more of it into their mouth. And then that is grabbing more of it until it gets into their mouth. That's a really interesting diagram I did there of that. But that's the only way I could think of is, like, that hooks in and then they leap over and they're pulling more and then the tooth grabs more.
So
it also seems like, and maybe it's just the angle and the position of that thing's head there as somebody's grabbing him, but it doesn't look like it has that robust of a tongue, so it might be trying to do more of a biting kind of an attack rather than flipping its tongue out to pull something back in like it would be for smaller items, which
Yeah,
would kind of also mean maybe it goes for bigger meals.
that wouldn't surprise me at all. Where's this? This one's from the Philippines.
Yeah. What if it eats the chickens? That's why they compared it to one. I'm
I'm sure
wondering.
it could take down chicks, probably.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
it would have to.
but that brings up another thing. What if they're used for egg piercing?
That's a good point.
Oh, that would be neat.
I mean, I'm not really familiar with many amphibians that eat eggs, but I mean, if it's an opportunistic carnivore and it comes across a nest of something, that wouldn't surprise me.
I'm wondering
Isn't
about.
there also like a species of frog that's been like documented actually like eating berries or something? What if it was
Yeah.
something totally wild like that?
It
Oh,
could
man.
be fruit. That'd be crazy if it would be cracking
Like,
like some kind of a
pick it-
nut.
Well, now I
Like,
feel like we
pick
got
it off a
down like
branch.
a rabbit hole of trying to figure out like what the
Right.
like. We have lots of really like sound theories, and like
So
now I'm really interested in this thing.
I'm thinking one of the more common or logical things, but it might be a stretch. If they have larger mollusks in the environment, because you see this with like the red belly snake and others, that they have like kind of that structure with their jaws and their teeth to like pull it out of the shell. Obviously, I don't think it would be like anything else other than that, because I don't know of anything else other than a snail. Um,
But what if the ridge on the top of the mouth is harder, and then those teeth are meant as a piercer? So what if it grabbed, like you said, mollusk or even like snails? What if that is meant for those teeth to break through a shell and then using a harder ridge top of the mouth to help crush it?
I wonder if it could also be like something that eats other amphibians that would help give it the grip for like things that are slippery and things that are inflated, like how they used to think that the hognose snakes were like popping toads with their fangs and stuff. Because I think that like Ceratophorus cornuta has those protrusions for sure, and like most of the Ceratophorus do, I think, or like all of them. But
Also,
those are frog
one of my
specialists.
favorite conversations that we've ever had, because we're just throwing out like, what if it could do this? What if it could do that?
Yeah.
Like, what if this is for like? It's like one of our most random, but also like scientific at the same time, kind of.
Because there's also that I'm drawing a blank on the name now, but the marsupial frog that is also a frog specialist, and that's the one that's known for having really insane teeth, where it's got like the full set of teeth on the jaws and stuff, and it almost looks like a lizard skull.
Oh yeah, there's an arboreal salamander out in Washington, I think, that does the same thing. Like
Yeah,
has
the
full
Pacific
set-
arboreal salamander.
Yeah,
Yeah, Gastrotheca guntheri. That's what I'm
Man,
thinking
you're
of.
way better at scientifics than I am.
They're crazy looking frogs in general. Super cool.
That's so. It's not this one then.
That's the salamander. I'm
That's
thinking.
the salamander.
Yeah. I was trying to get the salamander. I was looking for the
Yeah.
salamander. Okay, so this one. What are we on here? ResearchGate. Science
Doesn't
Direct.
because yeah.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to accept your cookies. I'll make my own. Yeah. Look at those teeth. Now that is probably the best like school photo I've ever seen. If like it was gonna start
Find the
kindergarten.
picture where he's like bitten into somebody's thumb and he's like covered in blood. That one's really creepy.
And look at him smiling like he's proud you did it.
He is.
Mhm.
Yes. Give me.
And he'll do it again.
I thought that was blood on it. Okay.
There's definitely a picture I've seen where it got somebody good.
Oh,
I think I've
my.
seen the same one because I tend to share it in reptile groups. 'Cause
Yeah.
It just amazes me.
Yeah, those are some good teeth. But yeah. No, I think
Oh, look how cute and innocent that one looks.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just a salamander. I don't need nothing.
He's never bit anybody in his life.
yeah, he said I don't know
Never
what you
do
mean.
such a thing.
So yeah, we have a lot of cool stuff here. I guess
You
on
should
that.
look up that frog real quick. Show off that skull.
All right, what are we looking up here?
Gastrotheca guntheri.
How do you spell it?
Which one?
All of it.
Oh, GASTROTHECA. Gastrotheca guntheri. Yeah, that first one.
Oh, I think I've seen this for. Oh, that's not even funny. That's not even real. Let's see. That's like what you'd see at a dentist's office.
That's fake. What?
Yeah, that archive one, like that's a good picture of the living frog.
This one?
Go
Which
down
one?
a couple. There's a green one, then there's a brown one, just a couple of different color forms. Yeah. They're cool looking. And then yeah, that's those teeth on the top. It looks like a lizard.
Wait, that white ridge on its mouth?
Yeah, it's got like true teeth.
What? One, I just love his eyes. I'm all about any frog that has leaf-shaped eyes. Like, but, wow. I've never.
And then you've got that one there with a female with a bunch of eggs in her pouch too. That's just another cool thing these guys do. They're just nuts.
Where are they from?
I think Ecuador
Wow.
or around there.
This thing's cool as hell.
Yeah, 'cause that's where my Riobambe I used to have her from. And I think that's where the gastrothecas are kind of centered around, is that region of South America and stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Really productive conversation, though. And I can't wait for a lot of the viewers to watch this. And for anybody that's watching this, we're going to be doing this on YouTube, but we're going to have a lot of highlights and clips from this episode on Instagram as it comes out. There's a backlog of a couple episodes of hikes and other podcasts that are going to be before this one, but we will get this up on Instagram as well in the couple minutes we have for Reels, but it's going to be really cool. So I just encourage everybody, check out the highlights on Instagram or tune in for this full segment or segmented podcast coming out in different sections, I guess. I hope that wasn't confusing, but just look for the parts of the podcast coming out and
It'll be there. It'll show up.
there we go. Yes. I feel like I butchered that. But anyway, I hope that you guys will continue to follow us and subscribe. I'll have some links for Sean's Instagram and some other stuff for Preuss Pets below. But that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share for more content. We'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Yeah.